Morning.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Ambrosio.
Hi.
You can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Somebody has a really loud microphone, but I don't know who.
Yeah, not me. Okay. Good morning. Good afternoon. Okay.
Sometimes I forgot we're in the same continent.
Yeah. Asha, is it yeah, you can hear me fine. Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you
good.
really fine now.
Thanks.
Hello. Morning.
Morning.
Hello. Jacek, are you in Poland?
Yeah. I had a
Hi, Jacek.
Yeah, I had
Hi, Maya.
I should be in Copenhagen, but I had a little accident on ski and I'm immobilized in home, so not this time. Copenhagen for me.
Oh. Sorry to hear that. Was a really bad accident. Did you break your leg?
No, it's a knee question, and it's difficult to move. So, well, next time we'll see you in Bonn.
Get well soon.
Hope you recover soon.
Colleagues, may we ask you to have a seat and we will just start the meeting. Thank you. Distinguished members of the Ctcn Advisory Board, the Technology Executive Committee, observers, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure and honor in my capacity as the chair of the Ctcn Advisory Board of the Climate Technology Center Network to welcome you to the 19th meeting and the joint session of the Tech and the Ctcn. It's lovely to meet many of you here in person after so long here in Copenhagen, and equally nice to see all of you joining us virtually. And without further ado, I hereby declare open the 19th meeting of the Ctcn Advisory Board. And before starting our meeting, I would like to echo the sentiments shared by the Tech Chair in the Tech 24 meeting last week and commemorate the loss of Tech colleagues Dr. AKM Rafiq Ahmad and Dr. Hugh Saleh, whose contributions to the work of the Tech and the technology mechanism more broadly was invaluable. On behalf of the Ctcn Advisory Board, I would like to express our deepest condolences to the families, friends, and colleagues of Rafiq and Hugh. Today's joint session of the Tech and Ctcn marks the first day of the Ctcn's 19th Advisory Board meeting and last day of the Tech's 24th meeting. The purpose of this joint session is to take stock of the progress on the Tech and Ctcn joint activities to be undertaken in 2022, namely the joint activity on gender and technology, as reported in the Tech and Ctcn annual report to the COP and CMA for 2021. We will also discuss future joint activities. And we believe that this joint session is of great importance as part of the efforts made by both bodies to strengthen our collaboration and speak with one voice as the technology mechanism. And before we get started, it is with great pleasure that I share with you some opening remarks from Mrs. Patricia Espinosa, Executive Secretary of the UNFCCC. Unfortunately, Mrs. Espinosa could not be with us today, but was keen to nevertheless address the technology mechanism through a recorded message. So if we could kindly ask the Secretariat to play the recording. Thank you.
In Cancun. Dear friends, it's a pleasure to address this joint session of the Technology Executive Committee, the TEC, and the Climate Technology Center and Network, Ctcn. These two bodies that make up the technology mechanism were born at COP16 in Cancun, a COP I certainly remember well, as it was my introduction to the formal climate change discussions. In many ways, we have grown together, and we've made significant progress in the intervening years. The parties now more fully recognize the key role of the technology mechanism, and I know members have, in turn, worked hard to respond to country needs on climate technology. The Glasgow Climate Pact re-emphasized those efforts, calling upon parties to accelerate the development, deployment, and dissemination of technologies and to transition towards low-emission energy systems. The pact also emphasized the importance of cooperative action to accelerate and enable innovation, and the importance of providing predictable, sustainable, and adequate funding to technology mechanism itself. We appreciate the parties, organizations, and donors that have provided financial resources to the TEC and the Ctcn and supported the effective implementation of their current work. But just like every part of the climate regime, we need more climate action, and we need it as rapidly as possible from all sectors of society. Developing and supporting cleaner and greener technologies is an essential component of that work. The technology mechanism plays a key role. We know this from the past work and current demand. For example, the TEC has analyzed climate technology issues and identified policies to accelerate the uptake of technologies in several different areas. These include everything from renewable energy, energy efficiency, agriculture and coastal zones to, most recently, emerging technologies, technology innovation, and the technology needs assessment. For its part, the Ctcn has received more than 300 requests for technical assistance, engaged with more than 100 developing countries, and connected with more than 600 technology partners. This clearly shows that demand for its services continues to increase rapidly, and we have every expectation this will continue. I also note that the Ctcn has undertaken efforts to mobilize additional financial resources, including through its collaboration with the Green Climate Fund. I thank both UNEP and UNIDO for their partnership in supporting the operationalization of the Ctcn, This collaboration has been extremely valuable. Both the TEC and Ctcn also work together in Glasgow in another important way, by launching a joint publication on the role of technology for NDC implementation. It includes recommendations on how to stimulate the uptake of climate technologies to accelerate parties' efforts towards achieving their NDC targets. In a year when we continue to call upon parties to provide more ambitious plans, your work is very much welcomed and needed. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you have important discussions ahead, and I will let you go to that work. On behalf of UN Climate Change and many others, I not only congratulate you for your work, but also your efforts in facilitating and engaging stakeholders to undertake their work. This is such a key part of what you do, what the Paris Agreement is about, and how we must move forward in the future. Inclusive multilateralism is the only way we can address our climate goals. I encourage you to continue working to support parties on technology and stressing the need for them to enhance their climate action. In turn, UN Climate Change will continue to do its part to support your work, the technology mechanism itself, and as we move forward to build a cleaner, greener, and more climate resilient future. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And with that, I would like to move to the adoption of the Ctcn 19th Advisory Board Agenda and refer Advisory Board members to document AB/2022/19/2.1, which contains the provisional agenda for this meeting. And the draft provisional agenda was prepared jointly by the Vice Chair and me with support of the Secretariat. And I invite Ctcn AB members to adopt the agenda for the 19th meeting. And please raise your hand only if you have a question or comment to make. And if no comments are made, we will interpret that as agreement. And I'm now looking around the room and also making sure to check the Zoom meeting. Seeing no objections, the agenda is adopted. Now I will turn to agenda item 2.2 of the agenda, adoption of the Ctcn's 18th Advisory Board meeting minutes, which refers to document AB/2022/19/2.2. And unless there are any specific proposed adjustments to the draft minutes from the AB18, I would like to invite the board to adopt the minutes of AB18. So again, I'm looking around the room here and also keeping an eye on the chat. And seeing no objections, it's so decided. Now we come to matters relating to the Convention's technology mechanism, and the chairs and vice chairs of the TEC and Ctcn have proposed a slight modification from previous sessions for this agenda item, taking into consideration guidance from COP26 to strengthen the provision of feedback between both bodies with a view to ensuring coherence and synergy and effective implementation of the technology mechanisms mandates. And indeed, in addition to reporting on the progress of each other's activities since Tech 23 and AB 18, the chairs of both bodies will also share some policy and implementation issues that are observed from the respective work. And now I would like to invite the newly elected chair of the Technology Executive Committee, Mr. Ambrosio Jublano del Real, to provide an update on the work of the TEC and reflections on synergies with the Ctcn. Thank you, and Ambrosio, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Moa, and good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to all the colleagues and observers looking at the webcast. I'm gonna go straight into the presentation about the outcomes of the meetings we had last week and the opportunities we have for enhancing systematic feedback between our two bodies. Please, next slide. What issues we considered last week were the outcomes of the Glasgow Climate Change Conference, the implementation of our rolling work plan for 2019 to 2022 in each of the key themes, the tech synthesis report on technology development transfer, that's going to be an input to a GST, to a global stocktake process, the gender mainstreaming, and we're going to keep discussing that today, and the beginning of the preparation of our next tech rolling work plan. In this regard, I may say there was a proposal for making a 5-year work plan. It depends on what we finally agreed, but that is a strong signal regarding the new synergies we're looking for to align the timeframes of both bodies regarding their work plans. Next slide, please. In implementing the tech rolling work plan, in each theme, in innovation, we initiated a compilation of good practices, lessons learned in setting up and implementing a national system of innovations. We considered the outcome of the technology data events on innovative approaches for strengthening coastal and ocean adaptations, alongside several stakeholders and relevant institutions. We consider a draft policy brief on approaches for strengthening coastal and ocean adaptations on integrated technology and nature-based solutions to be finalized after our last meeting, with a view of presenting a brief policy for Ocean Day in June. In implementation, we consider a draft policy brief on linkage between TNA process and NDC process. Next slide, please. On enabling environment and capacity building, we organize a thematic dialogue on enabling environments to incentivize the private and public sector in the development and transfer of technologies. And we consider a background paper on decarbonization technologies for sustainable road mobility. On collaboration and stakeholder engagement, we consider a background paper on experience and lessons learned on tech collaboration and stakeholder engagement, and further collaboration with several relevant institutions to advance our work on innovation, adaptation, and technologies. These were the same institutions that worked with us in the coastal and ocean papers that previously were mentioned. On support, we consider a draft technical paper on experience and lessons learned for support for climate technologies provided by the operating entities on the financial mechanism, and consider a tech synthesis report on matters related to technology development and transfer as input to a global stocktake under the Paris Agreement. Regarding gender mainstreaming, we consider progress of gender mainstreaming within text work and share consideration of future work undertaken on this matter. Sadly, we do have bad news regarding gender mainstreaming because right now we only have 2 female members on the TEC. So we might need to invite parties to address this issue. And we initiated the preparation of the TEC work plan. The ongoing collaboration between Ctcn includes the joint sessions between both bodies, the joint task force, including the work in NDC and gender, the tech activities that draw on information from Ctcn activities on the ground, for example, the paper on enabling environments and capacity building, endogenous capacity and technologies, and so on, the joint monitoring and evaluation framework and issuance of the BNL NDE survey, the joint communication and outreach activities of the technology mechanisms, including sign events and others, and the participation in each other's meetings and events. This is the business as usual scenario, you might say, regarding the ongoing collaborations between TEC and Ctcn. In our joint annual report on 2021, we include some lessons learned from this joint work. I'm not going to go into the details on each one, but I will mention a few of them. For example, the important role that the joint sessions and joint events and providing spaces to enhance the collaboration and foster deep engagement on issues of mutual relevance and understanding of each other's bodies' works. The joint work to address common issues that strengthen this coherence and enhance the synergy of the two bodies. We had an amazing paper that's going to be referenced later that was relevant to the two bodies. That's just a good example of this joint work. The TEC and Ctcn consider important to continue improve the feedback mechanism between the two bodies. So that's part of the discussion later today. So we're not gonna into detail now. And of course, the monitoring and evaluation system jointly developed by the TEC and the Ctcn, which includes this biennial survey, useful for tracking the impact of the activities under the technology mechanism. Next slide, please. During our discussions last week, we saw that almost every one of them is of relevance to this joint work or has relevance to the Ctcn work. For example, we have these policy briefs, and these policy briefs can inform technical assistance that touch upon the same subject of the policy brief. For example, the innovative approach for strengthening coastal and ocean adaptation, integrating technology in nature-based solutions, or the decarbonization technologies for sustainable road mobility. We also have the policy briefs on linkage and technology needs assessment process, and this one touch upon the role that Ndcs and Ctcn have in these linkages between the TNA and NDC process and the further role that they can play. We also had a discussion on experience and lessons learned from tech collaboration and stakeholder engagement, and there was a recommendation. I'm going to mention a very few specific recommendations as an example. Through the ND forums have been initiated, this could be first enhanced. ND could play a key role as a potential collaborator in the regions, beside the joint events and joint meetings, and we can make a link between this policy brief and the role of NDE and network members regarding the usage of this policy brief, but also the feedback back to us regarding the quality and pertinence of the brief. We also have a draft technical paper on experience and lessons learned from support for climate technologies. And again, this is a really deep document. I want to pull just one specific example. It has a lot of examples and findings regarding the role of Ctcn and NDC. One of them that I want to mention is how the Ctcn can serve this stepwise path from first establishing and strengthening a recipient country institutional setup to enable continued engagement with the Green Climate Fund. And this means that through the Green Climate Fund readiness programs in collaboration with the Ctcn, you start to create capacities inside the countries, thanks to the TAs being generally more easily to use or send than their readiness. But then you start to build up these capacities inside the country with their relationship with the Green Climate Fund. And that's one really interesting finding amongst several others. So this is just one example of different things of interest for the Ctcn AV members, and we invite to look at all these documents. And of course, the synthesis report of the Technology Executive Committee on Technology Element Transfer for the Global Stocktake that have examples on knowledge building and opportunities. For example, it's mentioned the private factor for climate technology research in the element is scarce. So what's the role that the TEC, the Ctcn, the Standing Committee on Finance, and the financial institutions under the convention can play through their knowledge and experience that can support this private funding for climate technology R&D, and by leveraging their own funds or their own knowledge. And also the TEC and the Ctcn observe that experience sharing and capacity building collaboration between countries can stimulate the uptake of climate technologies. And a concrete example of that was of that climate technology knowledge and experience were the technology roadmaps that were also specifically mentioned in the joint publication that was published last year. So next slide, please. We have these publications. These are the publications that were published after the last tech meeting. So we have the emerging climate technologies in the energy supply sector. They could be useful for technical assistance related to the energy supply sector. We have this paper that I already mentioned several times, technology in national and determined contributions, stimulating the uptake of technology in support of national determined contributions implementations. We're going to discuss this specifically under the new activities. So I will know into each of the specific recommendations that were addressed directly to the tech and the Ctcn. We have the enabling environment and challenges to technology development transfer that have a lot of useful findings. So I invite every AB member to read this publication because it's relevant to the work of the both bodies. And of course, the implementation of technology needs assessment, the linkage between DNA and NDC process that was as a publication, but also as a discussion on a brief policy. Besides that, I would like to make some points regarding the opportunities of enhancing the systematic feedback within the tech and the Ctcn and how we can operationalize this feedback. So beyond the sessions, the tech and the Ctcn IB may wish to consider to establish additional arrangements for a more systematic provision of feedback between the two bodies. For example, utilize the tech and Ctcn IB sessions to strengthen the mutual feedback between the tech chair and Ctcn IB chair, so we can share systematic policy and implementation issues we observe from our respective work during the joint meetings, as we're doing right now. And hold a dedicated session, for example, an annual strategy session for in-depth discussions between the tech and the Ctcn IB on lessons learned, challenges, and opportunities for improving the coherence and synergy of the works of the two bodies. So thank you very much. Back to you, Ma.
Thank you very much for that, Ambrosio, and congratulations to the election of you as chair, and also for Mr. Stig Svenningsen as vice chair for the tech. And I would now like to give a presentation from the Ctcn side and also provide some suggestions for synergies to work further on. And I will highlight a few examples in each of the themes of the technology framework, and also point to some suggestions that can be taken up by tech as part of the joint work. First of all, since launching the Adaptation Fund Climate Innovation Accelerator Program in November 2020, the Ctcn has received over 200 project ideas to foster innovation in climate change adaptation. And the program has generated a number of insights in terms of developing countries' climate adaptation needs. And one particular element that stands out is the need to strengthen national capacities to articulate the climate adaptation technology needs better. Second, the Ctcn's Youth Climate Innovation Labs and Academy program in Africa, Asia Pacific, and Latin America and Caribbean concluded in 2021. And the program provided hands-on support to enable early-stage startups to develop and incubate their ideas into viable projects. And over 1,300 applications from young innovators were received, with 19 promising startups receiving support from the program. And as a result of the program, some teams have already been able to access initial funding, while others have created partnerships to pilot their solutions. Third, this year, the Ctcn piloted a new training program and webinar series on blockchain technologies to build knowledge among Ndcs and the climate policy community on the benefits, limits, and uses of blockchain technology for climate mitigation and adaptation. And based on the program's success, the Ctcn is exploring avenues to further this work, for example, by responding to technical assistance requests on blockchain technologies and proposing other capacity building activities. Next slide, please. Thanks. And these anchor programs have given insight on what countries might need and the policy work that would be helpful. And I will not go through all these suggestions, but just highlight a few. So one thing is that the tech may wish to look at policy frameworks that have been effective enablers for research, development, and innovation on adaptation technologies in general. And second, it could also be worthwhile to explore further how proven technologies like information and communication technologies or remote sensing, which have real potential to impact the uptake of climate technologies, can provide some innovation on old, tried and tested technologies like climate information systems or nature-based solutions. Next slide, please. And in the area of implementation, key achievements for the Ctcn from 2021 included that the Ctcn completed 23 technical assistance projects across 28 countries, where 4 were multi-country projects. And if we look at the total requests received since the Ctcn became operational, the center has received 332 requests for technical assistance support. However, if we also include the technical assistance requests received through the AFCEA program, this number jumps to 520. And from the ongoing portfolio and the new requests coming in, we can identify several trends across regions. In Africa, the circular economy concept is increasingly at the center of attention due to its twofold potential for both greenhouse gas emission reductions and increased resilience through sustainable resource management. Furthermore, requests for the use of photovoltaics in the context of the energy, water, food nexus have been popular. In the Pacific, there is a clear trend for cleaner and more efficient technologies, particularly in the energy and transport sector. And in Asia, requests for adaptation and cross-sectoral support increased, targeting improvement of information and decision support systems and piloting of technologies to address water management issues. And last, in Latin America, we can see an increase in adaptation requests targeting nature-based solutions and adaptation technologies for increased water sector resilience. In the Caribbean, e-mobility and resilient infrastructure systems are areas of significant demand, as well as requests on green hydrogen. Next slide, please. In terms of feedback to the tech, based on the Ctcn's large portfolio of technology transfer and applications on the ground, there would be opportunities for greater engagement and input from the Ctcn to tech on tech's policy papers and publications. And some immediate examples include the tech's work on national systems of innovation and low carbon transport. Second, there would also be opportunities to co-create future knowledge work, such as looking at contexts where implementation of proven technologies in new contexts occurs simultaneously with policy development. Next slide, please. In the area of enabling environment and capacity building, in 2021, the Ctcn concluded 2 technology clinics for small and medium enterprises in Kenya and Tanzania. This incubator program seeks to help industrial SMEs move from conventional technologies to climate-friendly technologies by creating linkages to financial providers and technology solution providers. And last year, the Ctcn collaborated with the Women and Gender Constituency for the 2021 edition of the Gender Just Climate Solutions Award and Mentoring Program. And over 150 applications were received for the award program, and out of which 3 winners were selected. And last, the Ctcn also organized its annual regional NDE forum as part of the UNFCCC Regional Climate Weeks, bringing together stakeholders from the regions to discuss and exchange experiences on priority climate technology needs. Some emerging themes from the discussions with NDEs include continued need for capacity building of NDEs in many areas, but also the need to raise awareness of the technology mechanism in general and the role of NDEs. And finally, the Ctcn has made efforts to raise visibility and awareness of its work through participation in numerous events globally, organizing webinars jointly with network members and other stakeholders, and developing or contributing to various publications. Next slide, please. And this also has spurred some reflections on possible areas where the tech's policy perspective would add value, namely, for example, by undertaking work on understanding the effectiveness of incubator programs better, and develop recommendations for enabling environments to promote engagement with SMEs. And a second point would be to further reflections on enabling environments and capacity building interventions that are likely to maximize the impactfulness of the NDE role at the national level. Next slide, please. On collaboration and stakeholder engagement, 84 members joined the Ctcn network in 2021, bringing the total number of network members to 707. And 74% of the new members last year were from the private sector. And in the LAC region, the Ctcn became one of 8 strategic partners of the Latin America and Caribbean Circular Economy Coalition, which seeks to develop a common regional vision and work plan on circular economy. And the Ctcn is also engaging in technical work across 6 countries in the LAC region, which seeks to develop a shared understanding of climate change metrics in circular economy measures. And last year, the Ctcn engaged with constituencies of indigenous peoples, women, and youth on climate technologies. A few examples include the Ctcn's Youth Knowledge Exchange Program launched with Youngo. And last point is that the Ctcn also communicated to the local communities and indigenous peoples platform that it stands ready to support its efforts through knowledge sharing on technology issues and indigenous peoples and local communities. And some reflections here for feedback to tech is that in the light of the numerous calls for the technology mechanism to enhance its engagement with the private sector, the tech may wish to explore what types of collaborating mechanisms favor collaboration and stakeholder engagement with the private sector, particularly in the context of climate technologies. And second, the tech may also complement the Ctcn's work as part of the LAC Circular Economy Coalition. Next slide, please. In the area of support, in 2021, the Ctcn continued its collaboration with the Adaptation Fund, the GCF, the GEF, and the NDC partnership, and also strengthened partnerships with institutions such as the Islamic Development Bank and UNDP. And moving forward, the Ctcn is exploring opportunities for scaled-up funding through multi-country and larger-scale project development and the use of a more programmatic approaches to technical assistance implementation. In 2021, the Ctcn completed its Vision to Concept capacity building program in Eswatini and Sudan. And the capacity building program sought to build key stakeholders' capacities in developing bankable projects related to the implementation of technology needs assessments and technology action plans results, and to fast-track the implementation of countries' NDCs with a view to access climate finance from the GCF. And as a result, 8 draft concept notes were developed and will hopefully be picked up by GCF-accredited entities for further development into GCF proposals and submissions. Next slide, please. And here is some final feedback for consideration by the TEC, where the TEC could consider further work to understand better the considerations that are necessary for access to scaled-up funding for climate technologies. And in terms of input provided to the operating entities of the financial mechanism and other constituted bodies, the Ctcn stands ready to jointly develop and submit inputs together with the TEC to any requests for climate technology perspectives from constituted bodies, as opposed to providing separate submissions. Thank you very much. I stop here. And colleagues, we would now like to open the floor for TEC and AB members for comments on these updates and suggestions shared. And the objective of this discussion is to share knowledge and experiences to promote coherence and systematic connection between the policy work of the TEC and the implementation support provided by the Ctcn, and thereby enhancing the provision of feedback between the two bodies as mandated by parties. And here I would also like to ask TEC and AB members to reflect on this agenda item, if you think this is useful, and if you think we should have an agenda item like this also for the meeting in the fall at our joint session. So colleagues, I here open the floor, so please raise your flag if you're in the room, if you would like to take the floor, or raise your hand in the Zoom meeting or indicate in the chat if you would like to take the floor. Thank you so much. Okay, I see some raised hands here in the Zoom meeting. Fred, please, you have the floor, and then Ambrosio. So, Fred, please.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues. My apologies. I should have been in the meeting physically, but due to visa problems, I could not be there. We tried our best with the help of Moses Omedi, the Vice Chair, but we couldn't manage to get the visa. However, I've just joined you virtually, and I think I'll continue virtually. Now, I just wanted to raise one issue which I found the chair presenting, the various capacity building training that you've had in particular countries. We have observed that the issue of capacity building in relation to development of bankable projects is a generic problem for all the LDCs. Is there a program to ensure that all LDCs benefit from capacity building to enable them develop bankable projects so that they can access funds for technology development and transfer? Then the other issue is the requests which are submitted by parties to the Ctcn and to the for consideration. I realize that some of the outputs of the Ctcn has always been related to policy issues, and some of the policy issues, I have a feeling that the tech could come in and take them up for further
Sorry, Fred, to interrupt you, but we cannot hear you any longer. Very sorry to interrupt you, Fred, but we lost your sound. Very sorry for that. Hopefully we'll come back to Fred, but in the meantime, I give the floor to Ambrosio and then to Ditram, and then I see a raised flag in the room from Mr. Erwin Rose from the US. So please, Ambrosio, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ma. First, I wanted to check that the audio is corrected. Can you hear me well?
We can hear you well, thanks.
Thank you very much. I have to make some changes in the configuration system here. So I'm speaking as a tech member, not as the tech chair, and the suggestion will be if we can try to make this exercise, I think it's very valuable, but a bit more systematic. On the tech side, probably not just having the presentations, but probably some sort of selection of all Ctcn or NDE related findings in the document, so we can present back to you the presentation, but also a document that you can review later with all the specific findings that are strictly related to the Ctcn. That will be a proposal from our side, how to make this exercise maybe more in depth.
Thank you very much, Ambrosio. Ditram, please, and then Erwin.
Thank you, Moa, and thank you, everybody. So I think I would like to point to the joint work of Tech and Ctcn in the task force as a Tech member. We have discussed this in the Tech task forces and in the Tech Ctcn task forces. And I think there is an important and enormous opportunity in utilizing the synergies on the work programs between TEC and CTCN. And I would basically encourage all members of TEC and CTCN that we use this kind of opportunity to the utmost extent. I think we have, from the TEC side, suggested or are discussing that we have an aligned 5-year schedule. And I think the next 5 years will be absolutely crucial in what we do on climate action. We all know that there is an enormous gap in reaching the targets of the Paris Agreement. We all know that we are not on track of meeting this gap. We all know that investments in fossil fuel industry and infrastructure is continuing, leaving a lot of stranded assets. So I think there's enormous opportunity for climate, for transformative climate technology, as the Paris Agreement is asking us to basically to implement. And this opportunity, I think, can be utilized by the by working synergies between TEC and CTCN in the joint task force. And especially, I would say there's enormous opportunity in systematically working on implementable roadmaps here. And these kind of roadmaps, I think they can be critical on enhancing the state of climate technologies and their enhancement in the countries. And there can be synergies in TEC providing guidance and CTCN doing important work on implementation. These roadmaps can be tailored to the needs of countries and regions. They can follow the methodologies of IPCC, which is pretty much working along sectors, which are followed in inventories, NDCs, and LEDs. And they, as a TEC member, has also proposed, there was Irvin from the US, they can be highlighted in a joint annual flagship report between TEC and CTCN, highlighting the state of implementation of critical climate technologies, for example, in countries and sectors. That can be, for example, the state of renewables and energy sector, the state of buildings and green buildings and buildings, the state of green steel and cement, the share of waste in landfills, and so on. So I think there is a very important and critical role which the TEC and the CTCN can play. I think we should use all the opportunities now in the work programs which are in front of us to utilize that and work as much together as we can do in form of roadmaps. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And we now have a speaking list here. We have Irwin and then Ken Wada from Japan and Matthew Kennedy from Ringo, Suil Khan and Ann Barr from Women and Genders Constituency. And I suggest to close the speaking list after this. I hope it's fine for everyone in the interest of time. And I would also like to urge members to be a bit brief in your interventions. Thank you so much. And Irwin, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone attending the meeting. I want to give a special welcome to the new CTCN Advisory Board members, as well as the new members representing the 3 constituency organizations that were admitted to the Advisory Board at the last COP, the Indigenous Peoples Organizations, the Women and Gender Constituency, and the Youth Constituency, in addition to the government representatives who were newly appointed. I think these presentations make clear that this agenda item is extremely worthwhile, well worth the time and attention for all of us. I also think it makes it very clear that there is a phenomenal amount of overlap between the work of the 2 bodies. And I think it's really suggested in both presentations that, as the parties have called for, both bodies would benefit from further enhancing their coordination and collaboration. I think in looking at these areas of common interest, common work, common issues that are being addressed by both bodies, this points the way to develop a more advanced joint work program, building on the activities that both bodies are already explicitly working on together. And in this way, both bodies can support each other in addressing their common objectives, themes, and by focusing on certain program areas. I hope that we can make a conscious effort to maximize the extent to which the TEC considers the CTCN's work and produces guidance relevant to the work of the CTCN beyond these joint sessions. Similarly, the CTCN would benefit from more TEC research, dialogue, and guidance that is explicitly focused on supporting CTCN work and considering the lessons learned from CTCN, as we're doing during this brief agenda item. For the CTCN in particular, I think the Secretariat is really performing heroically to implement extremely broad mandates from the parties and the overarching guidance in the technology framework. And I think the challenge for the Advisory Board is to help the Secretariat develop ways to navigate through these very broad mandates by providing more focus. And that includes building on what's already in motion and what's already been called for by the parties and endorsed by the Advisory Board, which is the multi-country and programmatic approach. And I think if we can help the Secretariat navigate these broad mandates by focusing our work more within the CTCN and in a way which overlaps more explicitly with the work of the TEC, then we will make great progress in having a more cumulative impact by consolidating technical assistance requests as much as possible to have them fall within defined programmatic areas.
Thank you very much. We now have Ken Wada, followed by Matthew Kennedy. So Ken, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, everyone. I think the presentation today from TEC and CTCN shows some potential to enhance linkage between TEC and CTCN further. TEC and the CTCN have different mandates, so they don't necessarily have to work together, but the work, TEC work and CTCN work are related in some way, and synergy between them can be strengthened. For example, at last week's TEC meeting, we discussed mobility. And I know in the past CTCN has implemented technical assistance on mobility, so TEC can learn lessons from those CTCN projects and can include these lessons in the TEC document. On the other hand, some of CTCN technical assistance is associated with the past TEC briefs. And the information in the TEC brief can be used for the CTCN project. So I think the linkage between the TEC and CTCN could be strengthened by providing feedback to each process. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Matthew, please.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's great to see colleagues, those within the room and those participating virtually. I really welcome the interventions, the presentation. Also, just have a couple of comments really. One relating to when the TEC Chair Ambrosio introduced the publications. It would be good to understand the process by which those publications get developed. I don't necessarily mean the topic areas, but understanding how the TEC engages with its constituency, its community, be it the private sector, especially in things like, I saw one on energy supply sectors, how it engages with policy officials in terms of roadmaps, and is there a role for research and academia in terms of informing this work? Because it does seem to be rich, robust, timely, but I would not like to see if it was done in isolation from a lot of expertise in the marketplace that could inform its work. The second point is picking up on something you mentioned, Moe, yourself, in terms of co-creation, and this is something that I would like to see more of between both bodies, collaborating and co-creating as much as we possibly can. And then the third point relates to adaptation. It may just be me, and I may have misinterpreted some of the slides, but it does seem to have quite a mitigation focus. And I know this is a really important, adaptation is an important topic in the run-up to the COP in Egypt later this year. And I did see reference to some coastal work, which is also welcome. But I'm just wondering, is there any targeted interventions around adaptation that the TEC are planning that they can actually release in advance of the COP? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Suil Kang, please. You have the floor, and followed by Ann Barr. So Suil, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to point out one key message from TEC and Ctcn presentation. One sentence is that TEC policy work could be more systemically grounded in case studies and lessons learned from the operational activities of the Ctcn and vice versa. So today, TEC and Ctcn proposed potential activities or like policy part today at the presentation. So I think there is very good starting point, and then also it is very impressive that Ctcn proposed feedback to the TEC, and I think that I'm sure that the accumulated and expanding experiences from Ctcn activities are very valuable source materials for TEC and Ctcn collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anne, please.
Thank you, Mrs. Chair. And good morning, good day, good afternoon, everybody and colleagues. It's a real pleasure also for me to be here today, and especially as a new board member, advisory board member, sorry. I welcome the comments made by the other members that indeed both presentations show that there is a lot of potential in more collaboration between the TEC and the Ctcn. I would even say that there are so many items of potential collaborations and also lessons learned that a more regular exercise is necessary for us to identify important priorities. Indeed, as was said before by Ditram, we are not on track in our goals to achieving the Paris Agreement promises, and that therefore it is really important to identify some priorities, how technology development and transfer can help us achieving the goals of the Paris Agreement, and ensuring that we have everyone on board and that the action that is already conducted on the ground by the people confronted with climate change is being leveraged and is being used and supported. Especially when we look at the gender integration, which is, I would say, the reason for which I am here in this advisory board. We have a lot of potential for more substantive integration of gender, and I would be really happy to look at how we can, through the collaboration between the TEC and the Ctcn, further that substantive collaboration and ensure that we have a stronger integration on gender in the development and the deployment of useful technologies, but also inclusive and resilient technologies. Also, I would support the comments from Matthew on the fact that identifying potential synergies of work on adaptation and identifying technologies that support adaptation is an important point. We are going towards COP27 to work a lot on furthering adaptation, as there is a big gap there. And I think that is also a way to make climate technology transfer and development more inclusive. So that I would fully support that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you everyone for your interventions. And now I see a raised hand from Ping as well. But Ping, if in the interest of time, if you might write your comment in the chat. And also we will continue the discussion about joint activities after the break. So we will give you the floor first of everyone, if it's fine for you. With that, thank you again. And we would now like to turn to item 7B of the Tech 24 agenda and item 4.1 of the Ctcn AB 19 agenda. And we recall that Tech and the Ctcn Advisory Board agreed on activities to be undertaken jointly in the period of 2021 to 2022 in 2 areas. First, technology and nationally determined contributions, including the development of a joint publication on technology issues related to NDCs, and 2, gender and technology. And under joint activities on gender and technology, the 2 bodies agreed to develop a roster of gender experts to call upon for various events, workshops, activities, and for consultation during technical assistance implementation. And gender focal points of the Tech and the Ctcn, with the support of the secretariats, worked intersessionally to identify and characterize the building elements of the roster of gender experts. And I now invite Ms. Kinga Xontos to update on progress in the development of this roster. So Kinga, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to colleagues. Is my voice and picture working fine?
Yes, we can hear you well. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So thank you, Chair, for the introduction. And indeed, the 2 bodies agreed on activities to be jointly undertaken, including in gender and technology. And the last session of the Tech and Advisory Board in September last year considered activities in gender and technology, including research on existing rosters on platforms that I would like to further introduce today. The desk review of existing gender rosters and platform. There was a preliminary desk research conducted in analysis in existing female expert rosters and platform in general, and gender and climate expert rosters specifically. Actually, the finding is that there are several existing and active initiatives for women-focused expert rosters. At least 50 online platforms were identified in diverse fields. However, none of the female expert rosters found was specifically or solely focused on climate change or gender and climate change, nor women experts in climate change sectors. Therefore, there is a need, we find room for going forward with our suggestion on the roster. The design of the roster is proposed to develop and maintain 2 separate and distinct rosters, both of which open to public, one female expert roster in climate change field, and one female and male gender expert roster within the climate change field. Preliminary work has been done on developing an online template for sign-up, which will be reviewed, validated, and approved by staff of the UNFCCC Secretariat and or the Ctcn. As per best practice, it is planned to have a gradual population of the roster before its official launch. Next slide, please. We have worked intersessionally to define sign-up criteria and categories for the considered rosters, including a strong academic and professional background on climate change and defined subcategories, and affiliations or membership of recognized organizations and networks. The draft sign-up criteria would include relevant contact information, expertise by geographic region, areas of expertise in categories of mitigation with subcategories such as carbon fixation, abatement, energy efficiency, renewables, and transport, and in adaptation sectors, including coastal zones, infrastructure, and water. Next slide, please. Further categories are the cross-cutting approaches, including community-based approaches and endogenous technologies, and cross-cutting sectoral enablers, including capacity building and innovation. Next slide, please. Regarding the IT infrastructure, it was discussed that the roster can be set up and hosted at a minimal cost, either on the UNFCCC website or Ctcn website. And in case of setting up the roster on the UNFCCC website, the roster can be linked to both the TEC and the Ctcn websites as well for easy access. And regarding the next steps, discussion suggests that we consider additional feedback from the Women and Gender Constituency and refine the roster in April this year, and prepare an introductory description of the roster and its uses for its landing page and for outreach purposes. We continue then discussing partnering opportunities with relevant other platforms in order to promote broader awareness for the use of the roster. In June, the decision has to be made on implementing the IT solution, and also to finalize outreach and awareness raising, including a call for experts to join the roster. By October 2020, we populate the expert roster with initial lists of experts. And having done that, we plan to launch the already pre-populated expert roster at COP27. With this, I conclude my presentation on the roster, and I very much, with my colleagues on gender in both TEC and Ctcn, and the Secretariat, I welcome any suggestions and invite guidance from both TEC and AB members as well as from observers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Kinga. And colleagues, I now open the floor for comments and guidance on this work. And I see a raised hand from Ping. Ping, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And also, I would like to welcome colleagues who are newly joined our Citizen AB and also the TAG. And thanks to Kinga, the gender focal point of TAG, for the introduction of the current progress on the roster. I just have one question regarding how detailed information will be included in this roster. Because the reason is, like, if you have like contact information of the experts, the female experts, that might be privacy issues. So just a question, how much information will be included in this roster. And I will stop here and I will come back later for my earlier intervention. I think just focusing this for the moment on this gender issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Ping. And the floor is open. Oh, Anne Barr, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mrs. Chair. Let me congratulate and commend the Ctcn for this work and the tech, of course, on the gender roster. This is a really excellent initiative. I appreciate the efforts made in laying out the whole concept, the definition of the rosters, and also the outline of the next steps, so that we have a clear understanding of the goal to launch the roster by the COP27 and how this will be done. I would have a question regarding the idea of having two different rosters. Why I fully understand the need of having different type of experts, and it being important to both promote female experts on climate technologies and climate in general, and also promote the fact that there are gender experts, male and female gender experts. On the other hand, I wonder whether that might make it a bit more difficult for people who are filling in their own forms online, that they might have then to fill out two forms. So I wonder if one roster with different parts or different sections might not be easier in total. Considering also these forms, its inclusivity is really extremely important, I think, for the success of the roster. And as the Ctcn Advisory Board has now integrated more members, I think it also, in the process of fulfilling this need for inclusivity, the roster could also help in that sense, with ensuring in the promotion that expert is not necessarily a scientific expert or an academic, but there are a lot of people on the ground that have knowledge about their ecosystems and about what is needed. So I think it would be really important that we ensure that when the people are invited to fill in their forms, they understand themselves as experts, even if they are not academic experts. And finally, the consultation with the Women and Gender Constituency, of course, is very welcome. We might even want to consider extending it to other constituencies that have this expertise, especially Yongo and local indigenous people platform, as they have a lot of indigenous women, for example, who have knowledge, and also we have among youth a lot of young female experts. So don't want to give more work to the team, but maybe that's an idea to consider. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And we now have on the speaking list Maya Skvardze from Georgia, followed by Suil. So Maya, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Before I go to the technical comments on the document, I would like to first reflect on the issue that is happening around us now. As while we are meeting very close to us, there is a terrible war, which is declared around a month ago by the Russian Federation as a special military operation and invasion of the sovereign territory and integrity of the Ukraine. Some of you might think that this is a technical meeting which do not have much link about that, but we all acknowledge that the war has an environment, societal, and humanitarian cost that can reserve the sustainable development and the threats to humanity's goal to tackle climate change in a timely manner. I would like to express the great concern at the reports of the attacks on civilian facilities such as residences, schools, hospitals, and of civilian casualties, including the women older persons with the disabilities, and the children. Recognizing that so-called military operation of the Russian Federation inside the sovereign territory of the Ukraine are on the scale that the international community has not seen in Europe in decades. And it is clear violation of the international law, and that the urgent actions are needed to save the generation from the scourge of war. And I would like to express a support to our fellow colleagues from the Ukraine, which we have actually also in the Czech, as I remember, who have to defend their homes. Thank you. As on the technical part to move about the documents, I think that the documents, maybe I missed when I was going through the document, but I think it would benefit to have a clear objective that what is about, which is that the tech and the Ctcn, whether the document is about the tech and Ctcn cooperation, whether it's about the gender mainstreaming or gender awareness raising and so on. So it would be good to have highlighted on that. And also on the annex that was followed to the document, there was a criteria about the mitigation, adaptation, and about the geographic region and sub-region experience. On the mitigation part, maybe it would make sense to have to follow the IPCC sectors, because it was a bit different currently as it was stated. On the adaptation, as far as adaptation is quite a country and region specific, maybe after the number of criteria, there can be added the other, which could, and please specify, so which could give more flexibility for the criteria. And also on the experience by geographic region and sub-region, it would make sense to split the sea between the Europe, between the Western Europe and the Eastern Europe, because it is quite also the difference in terms of the specificities and also the developing country representation as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maya, for that. And I would now like to give the floor to Mr. Suil Kang. Please, Suil.
Thank you, Chair. First, I would like to deliver congratulations on the big progress made for this meaningful work. I have a specific comment on the categories. There is a cross-sectoral enablers. So I think I wonder whether we can also consider some areas such as international collaboration and sustainable development and stakeholder engagement, behavioral change, and finally the social impact and acceptability in the list of cross-sectoral enablers, if appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I don't see any additional raised flags here in the auditorium in the UN city, and no more raised hands or indications in the chat in the Zoom meeting. So I'm happy to announce that we are now on time for this meeting, and we will have a 10-minute break, and we will reconvene in 10 minutes, and that's 3:35 Copenhagen time. So thank you, everyone, and see you in 10 minutes. Thanks.
Hello, colleagues. During the break, I'll be testing audio for audio issues that were in front of me in the first presentation on the tech activities. So maybe, Resta, can you let me know if you're hearing me well?
I think the issue is with the Ctcn in the room. So I would like to ask the colleagues from the Ctcn in the room, because we hear you from Bonn, we hear you very, very well. So maybe Clarin?
Yeah, Ambrosio, we hear you very well. No problem on our end. Ambrosio, do you hear me?
Perfect. And yes, I hear you well. And during the presentation, people at home could hear me well, or?
Yes, we heard you fine.
So the problem was only in the room during the presentation for synergies.
I mean, I think we also heard you there. Maybe you were a bit muffled, but we heard you nevertheless.
Oh, thank you very much. I was worried. I did actually have a problem when I was looking at the presentation. At one point, the connection clearly went more slow because you were showing the presentation, and I couldn't see the letters anymore because it decreased the resolution so low that it was not readable to me. So I had to make a quick change to the version I have in my computer to continue.
Not a worry. It went well.
Thanks. Well, let me know when we will have to start. Thank you.
Colleagues, we would like to resume the meeting, so if we may ask you to have a seat. Thank you so much. Colleagues, we would like to resume the meeting, so if we may ask you to have a seat. Thank you so much.
Welcome back, colleagues. I will now turn to item 7.c of the 24 agenda and item 4.2 of Ctcn AV19 agenda. At our last session in September 2021, the TEC and the Ctcn Advisory Board discussed potential future joint activities. The two bodies requested the Joint Task Force to further work on these potential activities intersessionally, taking into account input provided by members, and to prepare a proposal for consideration by the TEC and the Ctcn-AV at their next joint session, so today. The Joint Task Force met virtually early this year and discussed potential joint activities that can be undertaken in the next 2-year period. It also initiated a discussion on the potential of developing a work program for the technology mechanism and requested the Secretariat to prepare a comparison of the TEC rolling work plan and the Ctcn program of work, according to the 5 themes of the technology framework. I will now invite Mr. Ping Song, a member of the Joint Task Force, to provide us with a brief overview of the proposed joint activities of the TEC and the Ctcn for the period 2022-2023. Mr. Ping, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ambrosio. So is my voice clear? Hello? So can you hear me?
Yes,
okay,
we can
good.
hear you clearly.
Good. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ambrosio, my chair. Dear colleagues, could we have the next, please? So I will not repeat the background provided by Ambrosio already, so which you can also see here on the slide. I will move on to provide you with an overview of the proposed new joint activities of the TEC and Ctcn to be undertaken in 2022 and 2023. And I will also share a summary of the views of Joint Task Force members on a possible work program for the technology mechanism, as well as an overview of the analysis prepared by the two secretaries, comparing the TEC rolling work plan and the Ctcn program of work. So regarding new proposed joint activities for 2022 to 2023, the Joint TEC and Ctcn Task Force proposed the following 6 themes. In the interest of time, I will not go into the details of each activities energy theme, but we'll share 1 or 2 activities to give you a better sense of what is being proposed. So next, please. Regarding technology and gender, The Joint Task Force members have suggested adding an additional activity to the ongoing work on this theme. This would consist of collecting evidence of the benefits of the development of gender-responsive climate technologies and the case studies of local and indigenous knowledges, which could feature in the updates of the joint technology and the NDC publication for 2023. Next, please. So regarding the work on technology and NDCs, the Joint Task Force finalized the joint publication on this theme last year, as being introduced by colleagues earlier, by Ambrosio earlier. Recommendations from this joint publication included work on the technology roadmaps and regularly updating the publication. Next, please. Regarding the monitoring and evaluation system, as being also mentioned by Ambrosio, the TEC and Ctcn conducted outreach and national designated entity in 2020 through a joint survey to contribute to the monitoring and evaluation, to monitoring and evaluating the impact of the TEC and Ctcn activities. And the two bodies agreed that the survey would be conducted every 2 years. So accordingly, in the first quarter of this year, the two secretaries launched the process of joint developing and disseminating the second joint NDE survey. Next, please. Regarding activities on communication and outreach, the Joint Task Force proposed to continue building on the ongoing efforts initiated on this topic to strengthen the visibility and awareness of the technology mechanism, namely by conducting joint communication efforts and utilizing events such as the NDE regional forums and the COPs to conduct joint outreach. Next, please. To enhance the systematic feedback between the two bodies, the Joint Task Force proposed some activities to strengthen the mutual feedbacks. For example, in addition to better utilizing the joint TEC and Ctcn AB sessions to generate this feedback, an annual strategy session could be held between the TEC and Ctcn Advisory Board for in-depth discussions on lessons learned, challenges, and opportunities for improving the coherence and synergy of the work of the two bodies. So as we can see, there's very active exchange of views and ideas after we starting our session in this in today. So we're looking forward in future joint sessions on more work can be more exchange and collaboration work can be held by these two bodies. And regarding this brings us to the last proposed new activity, the development of an overarching work program for the technology mechanism to coordinate the work of both bodies and facilitate further coherence, synergy, and impact. So in this respect, the Joint Task Force asked the two secretariats to conduct a comprehensive analysis of the TEC rolling work plan and the Ctcn program of work. The work has already been done and is presented in Annex 3 of the document shared by the Secretariat. On this basis, it's proposed that the TEC and Ctcn Advisory Board identify gaps, the complementarities, and synergies that can be built upon and identify impactful activities that take into account the unique proposition value of the two bodies. Next, please. Now, moving on the summary of the view of the Joint Task Force on elements of an overarching work program for the technology mechanism, I would like to share some of the views shared by Joint Task Force members. With regard to the purpose of the work program, some members suggested it should focus on defined program areas while allowing for activities to be held jointly and separately. Others saw it as a means to ensure the TAC and Ctcn implement all the mandates and guidance of the technology framework. Some members suggested developing a single technology mechanism work program, while others referenced a chapter that would link the TAC rolling work plan and the Ctcn program of work. In terms of the implementation period, members suggested a 5-year period for the implementation. Next, please. There were also suggestions on the overarching theme and sub-themes to structure the joint work plan. Some members suggested focusing on a limited set of areas that support the main themes of the technology framework, and which would also allow the two bodies to work both jointly and independently to achieve common objective, while some other members suggested aligning with the key theme of the technology framework of the Paris Agreement. And finally, with regards to the timeline for the developing and adapting the work program, several views were shared, ranging from adopting the joint work program in the autumn of 2022, this year, to adopting it in the spring of 2023, next year, to allow more time for consideration and coordination. Next, please. Let me now move on to the comparative analysis of the TAC rolling work plan and the Ctcn program of work. To date, the TAC and Ctcn undertake their functions through a 4-year rolling work plan and the program of work, respectively, which are aligned with the technology framework of the Paris Agreement. So both documents describe the type of service or activities to be undertaken associated with relevant technology framework guidances. The TAC rolling work plan is more concise and lists activities and deliverables for each type of activity by year over 4 years. It's also updated yearly. The TAC work plan does not contain information on the budget for activities of the TAC, which is instead incorporated into the UNFCCC biannual budget. The Ctcn program of work is more general, highlighting overall strategy and ambition and serves to align the technology framework with the Ctcn service areas. The document is complemented by annual operating plans that contain details of specific activity and output every year. So these annual operating plans also provide detailed annual budgets in line with the resource available. So based on the information contained in the joint annual report of the TAC and Ctcn to the COP and the Ctcn annual operating plan reports, the TAC and Ctcn seem to complement one another across a number of the guidance area set under the technology framework's 5 themes. So next, the colleagues, this concludes the overview of the proposed new joint activities for the TAC and Ctcn, as well as the summary of the initial discussion held by the Joint Task Force on the potential of an overarching joint work program. In terms of expected actions by the TAC and Ctcn Advisory Board, both bodies will be invited to consider the proposal and provide guidance for finalizing the new joint activities of the TAC and the Ctcn, taking into consideration possible resources implication for implementing the new activities. Based on the guidance, it's proposed that the joint TAC and Ctcn task force work intersessionally to finalize the new joint activities of the TAC and Ctcn. Next, please. So thank you for your attention. Ambrosio, I give back you the floor.
Thank you very much, Ping. Thank you to the Joint Task Force for the excellent work and the overview that they have provided. And before opening the floor to Tech NAV members, I will like to ask Fred and Ping if they want to take upon the comments because they requested the floor on a previous agenda item and their interventions were relevant to this one. If you may wish to take the floor now or later, please let us know.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ambrosio. Yes, I did want to take the floor, and I also join colleagues in thanking the Chair and also the both Secretariat to arrange this particular session earlier to have both TAC and Ctcn inform each other on ways they can consider to improve their work future. I think that's demonstrate the potential for the complementarity, the synergy, and the collaboration might we might have in the future. And also, I do see these synergy, these complementarities are inherited in the DNA of both TAC and Ctcn, since by design, they are both serve as part of the technology mechanism. They both have their special role to play to complete the technology mechanism. So what I want to emphasize here is only improve internally the effectiveness, the performance of TAC and Ctcn is not sufficient. We must to change the status quo to realize what this technology mechanism being expected by many. So by changing the status quo, I think the TAC and Ctcn together need to work more in a collaborate manner to enhance the linkage between technology mechanism and the financial mechanism, to find more resources to scale up the technology, the mature technologies which are already on the market and can be available for developing countries to use, to scale up, to support their nationally determined actions, and also for the emerging technologies to find markets in developing countries, so to bring down the costs, so to have more deployment of such technology. So I think we are not only looking inside by improving the performance of TAC and Ctcn itself. We must jointly look outside to see how these two bodies and the technology mechanism to jointly change the status quo, to find more resources, to really have the technology development and transfer benefit the whole world, especially developing countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ping. I will like to ask if Fred wishes to speak now because he had trouble on his last intervention. He might be still having problems with his connection. So I will now open the floor for Tech NAV members to comment suggestions to the proposed new joint activities as contained in the joint note, in particular identifying opportunities to enhance synergies of the work of the two bodies. So the floor is open, and I will request the Secretary to help me with the speaking order. Maya, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ambrosio. So on this document, I have several comments or maybe at some point suggestions it can be used, particularly on the gender technology and NDC, and enhancing the systematic feedback between the two bodies. To start from the gender one, because we also had the presentation before this on the gender issues. So personally, I think that it's very important to split and to complement the roles while planning those activities between both the tech and the Ctcn. And for example, how the Ctcn gender focal point will inform the tech gender focal point on while it's like recommendations on the policy briefs, for example, because and for example, whether what are the technologies that women need or they can drive, or and so on. So also that the Ctcn can identify the needs that can drive the women engagement in the technology and so on. Ctcn can easily identify in its technical assistances, which should be the basis for the tech while it's developing the policy briefs and guidance and so on related to that one. So I think it will be very important to catch these linkages and the complementarities. On the technology and the NDC, we have mentioned, for example, the NDC partnership support and so on. So, and especially when it comes to the working with the partners, such as an NDC partnership, I think that it should be important to prioritize how Ctcn can support the technology inclusion in the NDCs, because currently what we have seen, there are just a few NDCs that provide the information or the commitments or the needs on the technologies itself, though the technology is one that can really guarantee the NDC implementation, whether it's a mitigation or it's adaptation. So it's all about the technology transfer, especially for the developing countries. So it's really critical. So if we manage to include the technology needs in the majority of the NDCs, I think, and I believe we will have the paradigm shift in terms of the supporting the uptake of the technologies, as well as the role of the technology mechanisms, such as tech and Ctcn, will be much more, needed, we can say. And on the enhancing the systematic feedback between the two bodies, though we have always had the joint activities with the tech and the Ctcn, so I would also strongly support the enhancing cooperation still between the tech and Ctcn. And while planning of the common activities or the measures, it's very important to see first what is the objective of particular activities. So currently we have just meeting with this one. So, but the overarching objective and the aim there should be very clear. And additionally, the particular, it should be very clear what is the role of the Ctcn and what is the role of the tech in implementing this objective. So it's probably from the very beginning, we should start thinking about this big concept and then go down to the joint activities or the joint measures. So, and again, to complement each other and to have really the real joint objectives and activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maya. I will now give the floor to Ichiro Sato. Ichiro, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. I think the proposed joint activities are all important and useful, but I think rather than selecting some of these now in separate, I think it makes more sense to integrate them into the overarching work program for technology mechanism and adopt them in a package. So if we can agree on developing overarching work program now, and then we can integrate it, all other joint activities into the overarching work program, along with other joint activities to enhance coherence, synergy, and efficiency of the technology mechanism. That's a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ichiro. I think there might be a procedural issue with that specific suggestion. To my understanding, the secretary explained to me that these activities, most of them are supposed to start now at this year. And one of the activities is actually the overarching program, and that's supposed to, once it's initiated, it's supposed to be finalized at a later section. That's my understanding. Please, Secretary, can correct me if my understanding is wrong in terms of the procedure and the difference of these two sets of activities. Tambe, you have the floor.
Thank you for the floor. The joint activities are actually very important, but I do not see anything on the training of grassroots communities or people from developing countries on this NDC data collection, like for the implementations of this NDC on the implementations of the NDCs. Actually, a lot of young people, especially in developing countries, have been expressing concern on the fact that their NDCs are not being implemented. And there is absolutely no monitoring on the implementation of these NDCs in those developing countries. And at COP26, most of these countries express concern on the fact that they do not have expertise on this data collection and analysis. And the Ctcn and the tech constantly go there to carry out these projects to ensure that the NDCs are implemented. But there is no follow-up. I don't think there is any form of follow-up to ensure that these NDCs are actually being met. So it would be great if the Ctcn and the tech can come up with a program where they can train the grassroots people on data collection, so that even the youths can be able to monitor to ensure that their respective countries are actually carrying out these NDCs. Secondly, I would like to suggest that youths from developing countries who are currently residing or who have had the opportunity to be educated in the global north should be empowered and probably provided with resources to return to their various countries and carried out activities to ensure that these NDCs are properly being implemented. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tambe. Nicolas, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning to everybody connected as well. Before going into the specifics, I would like to first of all echo the concerns brought by our colleagues from Georgia on the current war in Ukraine and offer my full support on behalf of the European Commission to our Ukrainian friends. Now moving on to the issue at stake, I want to thank our colleagues from Hungary and from China for presenting the work on gender and technology and the joint activities for 2022-2023. I think these are another opportunity to discuss in more broader terms actually the actions between these two bodies and the combined action indeed as we move forward for probably a longer term. There's actually a momentum where we should seize today, I think, not only brought up by the new membership of the AB, right, but also because of the great momentum brought by the climate action after COP26 and as the IPCC report was presented. Of course, I need to first of all praise the work by the Ctcn so far and its secretariat through Rose and also particularly Clarine and other colleagues for having undertaken with great success their mission. And today's meeting and the 3-day meeting should also give us the possibility to think further as we move next. And I think I would like to quote the words, actually, as I heard the message from Mrs. Espinosa at the beginning of the meeting. She actually outlined in her own way the outcome of COP26. Just to quote her, she mentioned accelerating transition to new technologies to address climate mitigation and adaptation. She also indicated that we need to accelerate the uptake of technologies in several different areas, such as renewable energy, energy efficiency, transport, agriculture, etc. Are we doing it today? Yes. Could we do it in an even more effective way? I think certainly. In essence, I think what we should be doing here is to bring a new impetus to the technology mechanism and see how we can do better to answer the overall objectives of climate mitigation and adaptation challenges, also implementing the Ndcs, as our colleague earlier said from Yongo, through the action of Ctcn and the tech. To quote the Ctcn slogan, once again, how to scale up our impact for the benefits of the global climate action. I would like to make 4 points in particular. The first is I believe we could do more towards a common program between these two bodies, and I'm actually happy to see that several colleagues mentioned that today from very different sort of parts of the world, different parties. And I want to reassure on one point, that we should do it while fully preserving the autonomy of action of each and every constituted body and their structure and their function. I don't think we should reinvent the wheel here. That's not the point. Second point I want to make is I think there's a potential for progress from a demand-driven model to an action-driven model, answering more effectively to the demand from developing countries in particular, that may not only be country-specific, but also regional, having a regional relevance. The third point I would like to make is that I think there is lessons learned, and I would like to echo the presentation and the great outcomes brought up by the 2021 report of the Ctcn. Actually, after what I think is close to 10 years of activity, all the sort of takeaways are very precious, and they can provide guidance very much precious as well as to what sectors actions could be directed to. I think this might be able to give us a possibility to qualify more what we think is behind the broad concept of climate action, adaptation and mitigation. And the final comment I would like to make is that I would like to commend the work achieved, as I could see by all parties at the tech meeting last week, in particular how to strengthen the emergence and sourcing of technology, without which, of course, the process of technology development and transfer would not be possible or be ineffective. So I would like, I think the case in point of this of today on gender, and certainly the work program for next year is very, very interesting, and I think and I hope we'll be able to find a way to work for the years thereafter for the benefit of technology transfer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicolas. Let me check the speaking list. Mohamed Handain, IPO, please take the floor.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't speak English very well. I prefer speaking French, if you want. Donc, je peux parler en français. Donc, je suis Mohamed Handain du Maroc. Je suis très heureux d'être parmi vous dans le Ctcn. La présence des peuples autochtones, donc je représente les peuples autochtones d'Afrique, mais je représente également les peuples autochtones du monde en tant que représentant au sein de Ctcn. Est-ce qu'il y a quelqu'un qui peut faire la traduction?
Volontiers. Okay, I will do my best, and I know we have some French speakers here, so please jump in at any time. But my name is Mohamed Handain, and I am from Morocco. I'm happy to be here amongst you all today. I represent the autochthone communities of indigenous communities of Africa, but also of the world.
Okay. Beaucoup de gens parlent de la technologie et les peuples autochtones. quelle est la relation entre la technologie et les savoirs traditionnels. Pour moi et pour les peuples autochtones, ils ont également leur technologie. La technologie autochtone, c'est grâce à cette technologie qu'ils ont maintenu, ils ont également protégé la biodiversité et nous avons des exemples. Je prends l'exemple de Kenya et nous avons une forêt des femmes. Donc, le rôle des femmes est éminent. Quand on parle des programmes du genre, les femmes ont un rôle extrêmement important dans la biodiversité. OK?
People talk about the technology and indigenous populations. What is the relationship of these two? For me, they have their indigenous knowledge that they have maintained and protected, and they have protected their biodiversity. For example, in Kenya, we have a forest of women who have an extremely important role in biodiversity.
Les peuples autochtones gèrent avec cette technologie autochtone 80% de la biodiversité. Maintenant, en tant que membre de Ctcn, on doit poser la question, la technologie et les peuples autochtones. Quelle est la relation? Donc, cette relation renvoie à la relation entre les savoirs traditionnels et la science. Il est important de conjuguer entre la technologie moderne et la technologie des peuples autochtones. Nous avons des exemples au Tchad. Les peuples autochtones prévoient la chasseresse avant qu'il arrive à travers la direction des reptiles et à travers la direction des oiseaux. C'est une technologie extrêmement importante. Nous avons un autre exemple de la gestion de l'eau dans les oasis du Maroc, au sud du Maroc, et les peuples autochtones gèrent la pénurie de l'eau d'une façon extraordinaire. Donc, c'est une technologie très importante pour l'avenir de notre planète.
Indigenous people manage with indigenous technologies about 80% of biodiversity. We need to ask ourselves how and what is the relationship between technologies and indigenous technologies. This takes us to the relationship between modern technologies and technologies of indigenous people. In Chad, for example, indigenous people plan for the dry season through the direction of birds. This is an important technology. In Morocco, for example, in terms of sort of water management in the oasis regions, they manage dryness in these areas in extraordinary ways.
Et pour finir, dans le cadre de nos programmes, et j'apprécie beaucoup toutes les interventions, toutes les présentations qui sont très importantes, je propose d'introduire un guide des savoirs traditionnels et technologies et le renforcement des capacités des peuples autochtones dans le domaine de la technologie. Je vous remercie. Thank you very much.
In the case of our programs here at the CTCN and with the tech, I appreciate all the interventions today and the presentations. I propose to introduce a guide on the traditional knowledge and technologies of indigenous people and the need for capacity building of indigenous peoples in technology.
Thank you very much, Mohamed, and Thank you very much, Clary, for providing the translation for the rest of us that do not speak French. So thank you to both of you. We'll check again if we have more requests for the floor. Yes, Fred, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ambrosio. And first of all, I do appreciate the presentation that was made on joint activities. And indeed, I'm looking forward to see these joint activities being translated into joint work program in accordance with the decision that was made. And I'm also talking from a point of view of the possibility of translating these joint activities into joint work program. I'm looking at the challenges that stand on the way. We all know that the Ctcn and the TEC have got different mandates. So the differences in mandate are some of the challenges that we have to go around in order to come up with a joint work program. However, I do appreciate the TEC for the task force, the joint task force where the Ctcn members and the TEC members each volunteer to participate in a different task force based on their preferences. However, the challenge is, what do we do with the different mandates, different functions of the TEC and the Ctcn? It is also important to note that when we established the TEC and the Ctcn, we expected them to work together for effective delivery. The TEC as a policy, an arm of the technology mechanism, how does it feed its policy function into the Ctcn to improve on the performance? This could also help in enhancing the joint work program. If we can come up with ways of seeing and feeling that the role of this TEC is actually feeding in the activities of the Ctcn as the implementing wing. So far, this is not very clear to some of us, and as members of the advisory board, would like to come up with ways of ensuring that the role or the mandate of the TEC helps in strengthening the performance of the Ctcn as the implementing wing. The other challenge that we are faced with is when you look at the gaps of the target groups. We should look at the target groups that we are talking about. What are their major gaps? What are the major gaps? What are the challenges? We have problem of capacity building among us, the recipients or the beneficiaries of the activities of the TEC and the Ctcn. How do we come up with a way of improving on their capacity? For example, we mentioned in the presentation the link between technology and NDCs. In fact, there has not been any deliberate effort or a guideline that helps the parties to integrate technology in the NDCs. And if there could be a way the TEC and the Ctcn could also work on this program, on a formulation of a guideline to enable the integration of technology into NDCs, then that is when we can talk of a joint activities regarding technology and NDCs. We know that a lot has been done on gender and the technology. There's a lot such that when you talk about the link between technology and gender, it is very easy for one to understand what we are talking about. But when you talk of the technology and NDCs, I think there's more work to be done by both the TEC and the Ctcn, especially in terms of guidelines for integrating technology into NDCs. Now, the other issue that my colleague from Morocco has mentioned, I think as the tech and the Ctcn, we have been very silent on the issue regarding indigenous knowledge, indigenous technology, despite the existence of decisions that would drive us to address these issues. I think since it has been mentioned, there could be a joint effort between the tech and the Ctcn on how to take on board and address issues related to indigenous technology, indigenous knowledge, because we know there are many different countries have got specific indigenous technologies that others can benefit from. So how do we promote, how do we develop, how do we improve these indigenous technologies? That is between the tech and the Ctcn. Now, the opportunities that we have at the moment is that both the tech and the Ctcn have got joint, as supposed to make joint report to the COP. That is an opportunity that we should take advantage of. Then we have the tech and the Ctcn participating in each other's work program. And so how do we make sure that these work programs are really joint as for by the decision for us to come up with a joint work program between the Ctcn and the tech? There are opportunities there to take advantage with. There's need for guidelines that should be developed. There's need also to implement the decisions that have been made. And there's also, how do we differentiate clearly the role between the role of the tech and the role of the Ctcn? And how do we identify those joint areas where both the Ctcn and the tech can work together? I think those are some of the challenges that we should address. And indeed, the most important thing is that the tech policy function should influence the Ctcn implementation function, and this should be felt by the beneficiaries. If it is not felt by the beneficiaries, then the work of the technology mechanism is not going to benefit anyone. So I think these are some of the issues that having listened to others and also having listened to the presentation, they should be brought on board and we should capture them. Thank you very much. Ambrosio.
Thank you very much to you, Fred. I've been told that we have Erwin now in the speaking list. Erwin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to everyone for their constructive comments, and particularly for the opening presentation on this agenda item. First of all, I basically think that we've had an excellent presentation from the Joint Task Force as well as the earlier presentations, and I think the paper that the secretariats have provided here is also a very strong overview of the current state of play, as well as potential ways forward in terms of improving the collaboration, and to make sure that and I think it represents an attempt to manage some different views on this subject. I think it's sort of a consensus document that presents somewhat different approaches to how far we can go in maximizing the collaboration between the two bodies. So to make sure that we move forward from this discussion with meaningful guidance, I basically would like to suggest that we somehow endorse these papers as the basis for a way for both bodies to move forward in terms of developing new joint activities and further working together on maximizing their collaboration. With that said, I have a couple of specific points and then a few more general points I'd like to make. On specific sort of editing points, but somewhat significant, on page 3 of Annex 1 on the discussion on gender and technology, I just think there's a need for a little bit of editing. The second paragraph under background, it says, further, the gender adopted at COP25 stipulates an activity in relation to, and then et cetera. So I think what's missing there is it's a reference to the gender action plan adopted at COP25. And this is something, not something to debate, but something I think the Secretariat and chairs can consider as a technical edit, but I also think it's more than just an activity that's referred to there. I'm pleased to see that this proposed is really deepening the substantive level of work on gender, as outlined in paragraph 3 of activities under gender. And then I think the additional material in this annex, without going item by item, represents a strong basis for moving forward and really expanding the collaboration. I'm tempted to propose that we take on more additional joint activities, but I think given that this is a 2-year plan that bleeds into the first year of the new work plans, and given I think we have a certain level of consensus behind what's outlined here, I'm satisfied if we could move forward on the proposed joint activities as outlined, even though I would like to do more. And I just want everyone to remember that the technology framework provides guidance to the mechanism as a whole without differentiating between what activities each body should conduct. And then we have a practice of presenting a joint annual report to the parties, which I think everyone finds helpful, even though, as Fred has pointed out, when you look at the joint annual report, it's really a cover page on top of 2 separate reports with 1 joint chapter. And that joint chapter reflects the limited set of activities that we've engaged on together. I recognize that we are continuing to expand those activities, but when I talk about a joint work program, it's a similar approach. It would be incredibly beneficial, I think, if everyone could see the 2 work plans packaged together side by side in 1 document. As we have as a background paper in Annex 3 here, we have the 2 work plans put together side by side, and I think we all find that very helpful. And without doing that, most people will not bother looking for one and the other and putting them together. So if you can just imagine 1 cover page for a joint work program for the technology mechanism, and then a section on the tech, a section on the CTCN. If there's an operational need to frame those sections differently, it's been pointed out that the CTCN program of work is relatively higher level, and then it relies on annual operating plans for more implementation level information, and it includes a budget. The TEC has been more of one rolling work plan revised year to year, but without a budget. If we want to keep those sort of operational approaches different, we can have 2 separate sections under 1 cover page for a joint work program of the technology mechanism. And then just as we've had a chapter on joint activities in the joint annual report, let's have a chapter on hopefully what we can call a joint program between the tech and CTCN, where while respecting the differences between the 2 bodies, we're able to really concentrate some of the work on more substantive programmatic areas, such as we've discussed and such as are referenced in the annex. And I think it's already clear from the presentations that we have several very substantial areas that both bodies are working on, and that both bodies could be much more powerful in terms of their impacts if we consciously, systematically start to define some common themes and program areas to be addressed jointly. And addressing it jointly still could mean different activities, but addressing the same issues. Much of our work is based on broad mandates from the parties. The TEC and AB members have the responsibility to work with the secretariats to administer programs that make effective use of the resources that have been provided. And it's easy to be very grandiose in our guidance and not be realistic about the resources available. And I think the CTCN works on that very deliberately, in part because we have a budget that the advisory board is aware of and reviews. With the TEC, we don't really see a budget breaking down the resources available to the TEC. So I think it would be helpful for the UNFCCC Secretariat to provide an annual budget so the TEC members and others can better think about aligning the rolling work plan with available resources to the TEC. I think it's a matter of both bodies separately being more focused, programmatic, and strategic in their own approach to their work, and then trying to bring them together and think about how we can accomplish that with not only each body working more strategically separately, but bringing them together as much as possible while maintaining their separate functions and structures. So I think we can build on this paper. It represents enough of a consensus to work with and respects the areas where we still have disagreement as a way forward to increase the collaboration that the parties have been calling on for years, particularly if we work through the joint task force that already exists to develop a strong set of common program areas for a joint program as part of the CTCN program of work and the TEC rolling work plan. One specific point that comes up in the paper that I would like to raise, I think the paper sort of strongly makes the case that some members think it's not viable to have a joint work program agreed by the fall, and they think we need to wait until early 2023. I think that would be a huge lost opportunity, and I think it would be enormously helpful to present a joint program of some kind in conjunction, ideally in conjunction with 5-year work programs for both bodies before COP27. So I'd like to urge both bodies to aim to agree upon a joint program at our September meetings so that we can present them to the parties at COP27. We can take annual guidance from the parties and consider the results into account and consider the results of the periodic assessment, but I think it would be a huge mistake to wait for more than a year to respond to the COP26 guidance to consider the development of a joint program, and that we should move forward on scaling up the impact of both bodies so that we can present this for the parties to consider at COP27. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Erwin. We now have Orly on the speaking list. Orly, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. This is my first time speaking, so I'd just like to say hello to everyone and thank you for all the comments so far. So I would also like to present some views on what has been discussed. I really appreciate the paper that has been put forward. And what I would like to say is that I basically agree to what I've heard so far from some colleagues, is that this is the right time to try and rethink is not the right word, but this is the right time to recalibrate the way we do things. It is, the CTCN entering its 3rd program of work. It's the beginning of another cycle of hosting of the CTCN. I think this is the right time. I'm also building on what Erwin was saying. I'm comfortable building on this particular paper as a starting point. I think it would be important to have some kind of agreement coming out of today that we will build on this, even though not everything in the paper right now is as we would see it or as we would agree to, but I think it's an excellent foundation to start with. In particular, I think one of the most important points in this paper right now is this discussion of improving the feedback loop between both bodies so that there is a more systemic integration, systemic integration of the work. I think it can go beyond just each body reporting to the other what it's doing and encouraging each body to build on lessons learned. I think it can go beyond that in the way that eventually, by having a more understanding of what each body is doing and by listening to the work of the other bodies, we can actually start identifying the areas of work where each body can leverage the work of the other body. So not only learn from it, but also use the work of the other body. So I've heard colleagues mention, of course, the CTCN using the policy advice and the policy research of the tech, and also vice versa, the tech being able to identify key areas of concern, key gaps, and so on from CTCN lessons learned. When I hear about the different roles of the two bodies and needing to respect their independence, I agree. I think this is how they were set up. When I look back at the decision, the Cancun decision to set up both bodies, most of what I see there is still very relevant in terms of the mandate of each body. But what I think is important is that things have evolved since then. And what's missing from those initial mandate descriptions is actually how the bodies would work together. So it's really late, when you look at Decision 1 COP16, it's really laid out very well what each body is responsible for. But I think we've come to the point where it's clear that there wasn't really direction on how we'd like to see the bodies work together. And this is something I believe that tech members and CTCN advisory board members have it within their authority to really start carving out and thinking about the mechanisms in which the bodies together serve as the tech mechanism, particularly as mentioned previously, that the technology framework doesn't differentiate between the two. So in general, the way I see this is being able to respect the foundation that we have and being able to modernize things further by building on what is there with what we know of what's needed now to accelerate action beyond what we've done today. I'm also supportive of trying to be ambitious and getting something agreed upon by COP27. I think this is doable. It might be a considerable effort, but I think it's doable, and I'm supportive of that. Finally, I'd just like to conclude with echoing support for the suggestion that the bodies turn some more attention to the indigenous technologies and some of the approaches we could examine with respect to that as a key piece of moving forward on technology development and transfer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Shirley. I would like to remind that I'm being informed we have only 9 minutes left, and the speaking notes are Sergio, Stephen, and Ting, Suil Kang, and Omedia also. And just check, I just saw you. So Sergio, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Ambrosio. Okay, first of all, good day, everyone, colleagues. It's a pleasure to meet with you, and especially my greetings goes to Maya because Georgia is facing this difficult situation, perhaps most than other countries. So this issue that is the joint work plan between TEC and Ctcn is, of course, extremely important. And there is, of course, a merit in putting together two points of view completely different that TEC and Ctcn have on the same topic, essentially. It is also clear that the goal that we are ahead of us is essentially an aspirational goal in the sense that at the point in which we are now, we have to acknowledge that this kind of collaboration has been quite tiny, I would say. While the aspirational goal is to have something like a combined, a unique, so to say, working problem. So it is not easy. There's a big leap among these two situations, the situation A, in which we are now, and situation B, in which we would like to be. At the moment, essentially in the document, which I completely support, we have talked essentially on the what, that is, what kind of topic we could afford together. My intervention is essentially to highlight perhaps that there is a merit also to start to talk on the how we could work together. I assume that we clarify better the procedures in which the two bodies could work together in the several topics. Perhaps we could add more credibility to at COP27. That's all. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much for your intervention, Sergio. I have Stephen now, but before giving the floor, I will do a very brief summary. So far, seems there is an agreement on the proposed activities. There is a request for a new activity regarding local and indigenous knowledge, sorry. Just to summarize, and now I give the floor to Stephen. Please, take the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. First of all, I support the comments of Georgia and the European Commission on Russia's war on Ukraine. I welcome this paper produced by the Joint Task Force. I think it's important to note that we're having this discussion after less than 2 years of any agreed joint activities at all. So there is momentum here, which is developing for closer collaboration, and that's very much to be welcomed. On the joint activities in Annex 1, I support all of these. I note that the colleague from Yango's point about data on NDC implementation is a very important point. So I think that's important. On the question of a joint program, I think it's vital that we respond positively to the guidance that parties gave us in Glasgow. A joint program is an opportunity for the tech and the CTCN to strengthen each other and to strengthen overall outcomes for technology development and transfer. I think that after 10 years of experience, more or less, in the technology mechanism, we can now see multiple feedbacks between policy and implementation. So how do we plan to capture and make the most of those feedbacks? I suggest that we ask ourselves, where can joint or aligned tech CTCN work make a unique contribution to technology development and transfer? According to the respective functions and mandates of the two bodies, under the technology framework's overarching guidance, identified in an evidence-based manner, not duplicating the work of others, but drawing on the expertise and capacity of stakeholders, as we've heard. There should be focus in such a joint program. We cannot do everything, but a joint program is indeed an opportunity for what we do to have greater impact. So I think this is a very productive discussion. I look forward to further exchanges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Anne, you now have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm aware that I've spoken already, so I'll be very short. I just wanted to express my support to the proposal made by the representative of the indigenous peoples, Mohamed Ndcs, and also the point raised by Yongo regarding the lack of data on the implementation of NDCs. So collecting data is really a point where we can make progress. And I will stop it at there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne, for your brief and swift intervention. I will invite now people that is speaking for the first time to prioritize them, since we have so little time. So please, Jacek, you have the floor.
Up to me, yes? Okay. So as it's my first time to take the floor, I would like to say hello to everybody, and it's a pleasure to be with you, even virtually. I would like also support Georgia's and the European Commission intervention on war in Ukraine. I would like to echo many voices on enhanced cooperation between two bodies of the technology mechanism. We should try to use, as it was said already, this momentum when two bodies are in the stage of working on their timely aligned programmatic documents and try to go along with outcomes of COP26 and navigate towards a kind of ambitious joint work program. We should try to identify maybe some priority areas and impactful action activities for the whole mechanism, as both bodies are guided by the same overarching technology framework, and it is something new we should take into consideration also. Then maybe we could build on that to identify implementing actions, joint actions, within the body's respective mandates, and try to use their complementarities and synergy effects. Of course, I also strongly support other joint activities presented in this very rich presentation and the paper. I would like to thank you for this paper and this work, and I think it's a good basis for the further work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jacek. I would also like to invite another first speaker, Pedro, República Dominicana. You have the floor.
Thank you. I would like to, first, I would like to support the proposal that we take, that we include the indigenous technology in the program, that in the common program of tech and Ctcn. And that's the first proposal. And on the other hand, I would like to emphasize maybe what was proposed by Irving, that it is important to have a common program. I think that this is in some way the mandate of the COP, and or that this is the best way that we could interpret the mandate of the COP. We should go to the common program where we should have plans, individual plans, but I would like to recommend that we integrate the common activities in one way, and in the other way that we integrate activities that are not common but that are complementary to the other activities of the TEC and Ctcn. Also, we have to take into account that the mandates of the Ctcn and TEC are in different levels, because TEC is more work more in politics, and TEC is more executive organ. So we have to take into account these differences, those differences between TEC and Ctcn, if we want to integrate one common program. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pedro, for your words. And I would like to invite Pedro from Venezuela to take the floor. Pedro, you have the floor.
Thank you. It's becoming a bit confusing. I want to say hello to everybody, wherever you are, whatever time it is, and thank you for the documents, which are very useful. I want to thank Mohammed for bringing to the table this very important issue. But I think Fred is totally right. I mean, I've been in the methodology mechanism from the beginning, first in the Ctcn, then in the TEC, now back in the Ctcn, and we have been talking about indigenous and local knowledge almost permanently. But very little has been done. And it's not because we don't want to or because there are no resources, it's because this is really a difficult issue, because Western technologies are very, very different from indigenous technologies. Western technologies are more like a product, like you can develop a PCR in one country and then very soon you can have many other countries doing PCRs. But local and indigenous technologies are very different. They are very contextual. They have a cultural context. They have a place context. They are even intrinsic to our worldview. So the main question that we have to ask ourselves, because I do think this is very important, we do something about it, is what is our role regarding indigenous technologies? And that's what, of course, I want to support this activity as a joint program, but I think we should center first in exploring what is the role of the technology mechanism regarding local and indigenous technologies. I would suggest to start thinking of protecting them, on promoting dialogues among knowledge bearers, but we have to keep in mind that this is very different from ever we have been doing before. It's not just a matter of doing a workshop or funding a new technology or developing a new technology. It's a totally different field, and that should be the aim of the activity, to explore that and to come to a conclusion, like what can we do? And for that, and I finish with that, it's very important to consult the people that really know about that. I think Anne is very right in the sense that experts don't have to have a PhD and come from the universities, and particularly when we are talking about this kind of knowledge, it's exactly the opposite. Most of the people that can actually help us developing these activities are people that are going to come from very different backgrounds that the ones that are here, including myself. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Pedro. Now we have here a short speaking list. I will give the floor to Kinga, taking into account the numbers we have in representation on the TEC. I might guess there might be a really unbalanced time right now between male and female members. So Kinga, please take the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair, for giving me the floor. I will be brief in my intervention. And I would like to thank the Secretariat for a very useful background note reflecting on the intersessional work And I would like to support the previous interventions and reiterate some points of key importance without going into details on focus areas. I would like to also share the idea that a more integrated joint work plan would help to reach the full capacity of the technology mechanism, building on and exploiting of synergies of the two bodies. And this is also, as I sense, a raising sentiment from the Tech 24 session. I would like to reiterate the invitation from COP26 towards the enhanced coherence and synergy of the two bodies' work. And as per guidance of the technology framework, the TEC and the Ctcn has been working in a complementary manner. The intersessional work should be continued with consideration to the respective mandates and functions of the bodies. And I would also like to call for a timely adoption of the work plans. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pinga. I have Suil, Ping, Fred, and Omedi on the speaker list. Suil, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I support the proposed joint activities today. And a practical aspect, I just have one comment on the development of overarching joint work program. So I would like to underline the importance of set up logical framework for this work. For example, first we need to, I think that the proposed theme, the accelerating climate change actions through technology development and transfer is very good one, for example. And then under that theme, we need to analyze activities or keywords in the 5 themes of technology framework, which are really closely related to implement the overarching themes. And then we can also consider the impact and synergies or urgency, such criteria to evaluate those activities which are very directly close with the implementing the overarching theme. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Suil. I have an update on the list. What I'm doing, I will just explain. I'm prioritizing people that have not spoken before on this agenda item and afterwards that have not spoken in the whole session. And then I'm giving the floor. So now I have Christian, that is our first time speaker. Welcome, Christian, please take the floor.
Thank you, Ambrosio, and thank you everyone for the warm welcome. It's my first AB meeting. I'd just like to endorse the proposal by a colleague from Indigenous peoples about examining and utilising Indigenous technology better. We support this, and also my colleague from Venezuela, who really wants to explore how we as the Ctcn and TEC can best apply our skills to do that. And I would just like to observe that this goes both ways as well. It's when we're trying to understand and utilise Indigenous technologies better, it can also create pathways and channels of dialogue where Western or modern technologies can be implemented into Indigenous cultures, and we may get synergies and find unexpected benefits from that. And I'll leave my intervention there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christian. We are reaching almost the end of our session, so I will ask the next speaker to try to be brief. Ting, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be very brief. I also thanks for colleagues for their sharing of their comments, especially those seasoned colleagues who have been served in both Ctcn and TAC, and also some colleagues who are currently served in both Ctcn and TAC. I think for those who have the knowledge of both entities will know better how the entity works and how this joint overarching work program can be developed. So I will also agree with colleagues that the document developed by the Secretary is a very good one, can serve as a basis for the coming discussion on this issue. But with regarding to the specifics, especially those key areas and also the timeline for adoption, I really appreciate colleagues who want we to come up with ambitious goals. But if we take this too rush, I'm wondering if we can have a satisfactory results which are acceptable to all of us. To me, I can see from earlier experience some of the rolling work plan or the program work has been adopted in the spring sessions, not always in the autumn sessions. So I'm wondering if we have more time, could we have a more improved document to consider? But I will also request some of the information provided by the Secretary, maybe later after the session, about from a practical manner, what's their take for this timeline issue. And also the chair and vice chair of both Ctcn and TAC can also come out with recommendations on this. Maybe we can decide later, not rush to a conclusion today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ping. I will now give the floor to Fred. Fred, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. First of all, I would like to echo my support for your suggestion that we should have a draft work program to discuss at the COP and maybe conclude at the COP on this issue. And I think I really support that. And the other issue is that usually we have a problem of interpreting the decisions or COP decisions. When we are tackling this, the joint work program, our definition of the joint work program should be very clear so that it guides us where we want to go with the joint work program. Because we have seen the challenges, we have seen the gaps, we have seen the differentiation, complementarities, and so on. So our definition should be acceptable to members of the TEC, members of the Ctcn advisory board, so that we move together as a body. So we would like the interpretation, the definition of this joint work program to come out very clearly. And lastly, I would propose that all these, our activities take into consideration the different functions of the technology mechanism organs, and then also the COP decisions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fred. I think we have Matthew. Matthew, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. So my first intervention is to support points made by Mohammed from the Indigenous Peoples Group, and they're very welcome and in addition to the program. I'd also like to support the words from Maya from Georgia, and certainly our thoughts with the people of Ukraine and all those countries on the border affected by this war. In terms of the work program, certainly I would support the idea of an integrated joint program. I do recognize that the need to maintain the integrity both arms or both entities. But I do think that over the last number of years, there's been numerous calls for enhanced synergies. And I think that we have all agreed that we understand the why, but the how has been the challenge, really. And I think that that's what this discussion really is around, the how to deliver on the how. From my sense, there's a clear landing place around innovation. And I think that Annex 3 really highlights that when we see the comparison between both work programs. Under the innovation line as well, I think the new activities around technology and the NDCs, while research and innovation is not explicitly mentioned, I think this idea of collecting more information from the new NDCs and the enhanced ambition from these NDCs, there's a landing place for both bodies to play a larger role here. So I'll conclude with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Now we're reaching the end of the session. Omedi, I wanted to do a brief summary. I don't know if you want to speak now or speak after that summary.
Thank you very much, and congratulations to have you in the tech together with Stig. And thank you, Moa, for making my work so easy today. It has been very smooth for me. And thank you, colleagues, for the constructive conversation that we've had and the engagement that can lead us somewhere. And I'm happy that we are having this discussion because we have also people with lots of experience with us. First of all, I think, as Fred put it earlier before, we have a challenge because, of course, we have with us guidance given on what to do. The language used was to explore. And I can't forget that. And we are exploring, even as we are right now doing our discussion. And whatever we come out with our exploration will still be not work for nothing. And I'm sure that it will be useful. But it's important that we do it from an informed perspective, because that is what will lead us to where we would like to go. And that means that we have to take into consideration the priority for developing countries because we are doing this for them and they appreciate it and they look forward to us. And I am part of that, and I will appreciate the outcome if it can really address my needs as a developing party. So let's not close our eyes to the priorities that developing countries have set before us. And we would like to really do something that will leverage implementation, because we are looking for solutions. And it is time for that right now. We've actually done so much on knowledge that we now need to put that knowledge into practice, and that calls for implementation. So I just plead with colleagues that we go in that direction with flexibility and understanding, and with from an informed perspective. So a lot of these, I know the Secretariat has a lot of work to do after this, because you'll need to synthesize what we have put together, or try to put in bits and pieces. But I think one of the things to be informed about well is that if you are talking of a joint work plan, it's not just a paper. And there is some implication about it. And if you do it well, it goes with the budget. And if you are assured of that budget, then you can confidently move on with it the way you would like it. Of course, it's not prescriptive as well, because here is a discussion that is open to all and that can benefit all of us. And already I've benefited a lot. I keep learning. I've been here, yes, but I keep learning. And even today, I learned so much, I would say. One of the things that I have seen here, and I really appreciate some of the points. I don't want to mention names, otherwise I'll have to mention everybody. But the autonomy of action that the two arms have should not be thrown away, because that is what brings a complementarity that nearly everybody talks about here. How we do it is an important thing, and maybe is the big question. And I think with our heads together, we should get somewhere with it correctly. And then the relevance to developing countries, I am happy that it even came from the other side. And I know who brought it up, and many of us also know that that is what we really want as developing country states. And in doing all this, we have lessons learned that we cannot just leave or throw away as well. These are valuable sources of information that will guide us as well. So I don't know whether with all this we are making progress, but really I think we should, because we are not reinventing the wheel, just like one of our colleagues said correctly, and I don't think we are getting to that. So if we know that there is a budget, as I know, if we move significantly towards that work plan, really, I would have silently liked to talk to our developed country colleagues, because you're also friends, and you control this budget, and to know clearly that we have a reliable budget for this that will help us to transition as we are talking, because also we want transformation. And we've been talking about the Ctcn constraints and all that. And even as we do the joint activities, we have not been bothered about who funds them so far, but we want to increase the scope to add value to it. And we must also be ready for what it costs, really. So let's bear all this in mind. But what I like about what we are talking about here, and that we should really continue with, is that we bring both sides closer, and each side knows what is happening on the other side. Yeah, and that we have the leeway that the tech can call upon the Ctcn at any time for an issue that needs completeness in implementation. Likewise, the Ctcn can call upon the tech for policy guidance on something that is ready to move forward. And in that way, we'll be really doing the complementarity that we are talking about here. And I would like to plead for that very, very strongly. But I can see that, Secretariat, you have a lot of work to synthesize all these things that we are saying with a lot of seriousness and passion and feelings, because from a developing country perspective, and this is very important, we need solutions. We can do internal organization as much as we want. We can look for visibility as much as we want. But if we are getting solutions from our end as developing countries, then we are winning. Then it's a win-win we are looking for. And please bear that in mind as we continue this discussion so that we can move forward well. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair Omedi. I think there is not me for me to reflect upon the systems, because you have just done it so well, so I will go straight into procedure. So summarizing, we have a convergence on the document and activities proposed. There were slight editorial changes proposed on one specific activity. There is a proposal of a new activity, but there is some divergence, because I heard that some proposed to be included as a new activity now, and others as an activity on the new work program, but that will be taken forward to the task force to consider. So by saying that, we mostly adopt the proposed activities. All will be taken forward to the task force to take into consideration the comments, in particular the editorial comment on one specific activity, and to discuss these proposals of a new activity on indigenous knowledge and technologies. I also would like to take the opportunity to call for anyone who is interested to join the task force to inform the Secretariat so they can be part of this work. And with that, I will close this agenda item and thank you for the active contribution. And I would also like to welcome the new members of the Ctcn Advisory Board based on the decision agreed at the last COP. So welcome new colleagues to the work of the Ctcn and the tech. Now we're reaching the end of our program today. We had a fruitful exchange and a good start into 2022. I hope we got some steps that we have undertaken today, such as change of view to enhance the feedback between the two bodies and discussion on potential new activities. We can bring the tech and the Ctcn to work much closer as a technology mechanism as was original ambition based on the comments made by some colleagues. I look forward to continuing our work intersessionally and to the next joint session in September. Before I close the Tech 24 meeting, I would like to take the opportunity to inform you that, and also before we close the joint session, to inform you that Wana Tanunchewatana, Manager of Technology Subdivision of the UNFCCC Secretariat, will retire in May. So this will be her last Tech and AV meeting for her. Wana has been leading technology teams since the beginning of the UNFCCC negotiations on technology matters. She has been instrumental in supporting the work of the EGTTT, the establishment of the technology mechanism in Cancun in 2010, and played key roles in the inception of the Tech and Ctcn. In recent years, she has been supporting the SAPSTA chair as SAPSTA coordinator. However, Wana's heart is always and always have been with technology. So I invite you to join hands with me in congratulating Wana for their well-deserved retirement and wish her a great and happy life after UNFCCC. I also would like to give the floor to colleagues to say a few words for Wana. Please, colleagues, you're invited to take the floor.
Thanks, Ambrosio. I think that someone asking me to speak. Did you hear me?
Yes, Wana. Sorry,
Okay.
in the speaker order, on the speaker order, we had you after members wish you goodbye, but you can take the floor now. Please go on
Yeah,
and
just
congratulations.
quickly,
again.
and then before you all speak, it has been my pleasure and actually honor to work with you and to see you all grow in your functions throughout the year since Cancun. As you know that the Tech and Ctcn was established at COP16 in Cancun, and even during the negotiation at Copenhagen, to see that this mechanism really set up and function very well. And today we are reaching the point how we can scale up. There is a kind of brainstorming discussion how to work together to ensure coherent support. Of course, the issue of budget is something that we need to think and strategize how to deal with it. Given that the Secretariat, as Erwin pointed out, we don't have a similar budget scale as the Ctcn does. So our resources are quite limited, and the budget approval within the constituent body process have a different process because we don't have our own budget approval for the tech, but we have to be a cross-cutting together with all the constituent body of the convention that's supported by Secretariat. So that is one issue that I like to mention to you all. And with that, I would like to thank the Ctcn UNEP and UNIDO colleagues who have been support this mechanism since day one. They are the pioneer organization really in the UNFCCC in the past for many years, or everything is supported by Secretariat. So this is the first time that Secretariat or the COP reach out to organization to be our partner and concretely have a role, meaningful role in support. And I'm very, very glad to see the presentation by the AB chair on the achievement of the Ctcn for last year, you can see that they have a lot of statistics, which is very impressed to me. I even take photo of that because I'm not sure if I'm gonna get the slide. But really, it showed that you really deliver. But how can we make the technology mechanism become more visible in the UNFCCC process? I have been speaking in various settings together with the presidency from both UK and Egypt, with Minister Alok Sharma when he visited Bonn, and also with the Egypt team when they come to Bonn for the retreat with Secretariat. To leave my legacy to say that we have been working so well in the tech and Ctcn. They have done a lot of good work, a lot of document, a lot of thematic dialogue, a lot of web media, a lot of support to parties, but they should deserve recognition more than what they are at the moment. And the presidency actually admit to me that, oh, we are oversight a bit because we think that you are working so well. We did not, we put you aside and only take care of the issue that really have a problem and require political intervention. But in fact, for something that working well, and that you will need, to showcase and to share the success story. And maybe they can do more with, with some kind of support and discussion with other partners. So they kind of telling me that, okay, for Shamanche, they will give some special attention to the technology mechanism. I even sell the idea that maybe we should have a pavilion on our own, because other issue they have their pavilion. And I have been talking to my team on finance and capacity building, saying that let's do MOI pavilion together. And we're thinking about talking to Ross the other day, the Ctcn director, saying that, oh, we should looking for budget to do pavilion. But when I talk to my people here on finance, they say, oh, one budget is not an issue, we can find it. So for MOI, we can go ahead. So just flag to you and my team and Ctcn team, Tech and Ctcn. I hope that I'll be back home in Thailand watching webcasts that we really have our own pavilion, so that the Tech and Ctcn can come, and invite relevant stakeholders that work with you for years to really share what they're really happening on the ground. So we get some recognition in Chamanche that the technology mechanism it really function, because that is a good opportunity, because there will be the first periodic assessment of the technology mechanism taking place at COP27. So it's a kind of very good opportunity for you to take stock and to see how you progress. And also at the last, I'm not sure if any of you will be able to join the Japan-Brazil meeting in last 2 weeks. Many head of delegation pointed out that there are so many initiatives launched in Glasgow. We really need to track the progress and show and demonstrate the meaningful or significant progress in Chamanche. And many initiatives that launched had a lot of technology component. And I hear the discussion at the Tech last week that they're willing to collaborate with all those initiatives, from the technology mechanism to really see how we can work together to scale up. So that is from my part. So I thank you all, and I wish you a continued success delivery. And I see you around, although it's not in Chamanche, but thank you. Over to you, Ambrosio.
Thank you very much, Juana. After the word just spoken, I would like to share a very brief reflection, because I've been in the process in 2016, and when you start here as a negotiator, you initially don't really understand the role of the Secretariat at the beginning. It's only through the years, through the working, through participating, that you realize that the work that the Secretariat does, that you have done with your colleagues, is the backbone of the work that we actually do as the technology mechanism. And I want to say that you come to realize how important the work that you do, you and your colleagues, is to all the achievements of the technology mechanism, the Ctcn and the tech. And with that view, I must congratulate the leadership that you have provided in this. Is an example of female leadership. That's something we probably, as a tech, the tech now has a big challenge, making sure that we eventually have more female tech members and have that stronger female leaderships among its composition. But I want to recognize the example that you provide. And I would like to invite again colleagues to the which to take the floor. I know Stephen requested the floor a few moments ago. So Stephen, if you wish, you may take the floor.
Well, thank you very much, Chair. I just want to say very briefly, thank you, Juana, and congratulations. I mean, it's your contribution to this process since the beginning is extraordinary. Really, the rest of us are just passing through, but I think you've nurtured the technology mechanism from being present at the creation, and we see the results of that over the years. And certainly as a former tech chair and vice chair, I was forever grateful for the support that you and your team provided in that capacity, as well as, of course, the support that you provide in the negotiations. So I cannot thank you enough, and I really do wish you a wonderful retirement with not too much time watching the webcasts from UNFCCC meetings, but I'm sure there'll be that too. And I really do wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I think Anne also requested for the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I also see that Omedia is requesting the floor. I just also wanted to express my thankfulness to Juana for sharing her long-time experience and fantastic expertise, especially as our constituency, Yongo, the Women and Gender Constituency, and the IPO started expressing their willingness to join the board. Juana was there to provide excellent guidance on the procedures, and that was extremely useful, and I want to thank her for her support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anne. I will invite now Pedro. Pedro has requested for the floor, please.
Thank you, Ambrosio. Juana, I just want to tell you that it makes me really sad to think that we're not going to have your charisma, your infinite wisdom, and your very useful orientations in these meetings anymore. But if you want your retirement, you deserve it, and I wish you a very happy retirement. It has been a pleasure working with you, and well, I just want to thank you for your enormous contribution to all this process, and particularly to the work of the technology mechanism. Thanks.
Thank you very much for those kind words, Pedro. I will invite Matthew to take the floor. Matthew.
Thank you very much. And just to re-echo some of the points made, I first met Juana I think in Poland in 2008, and we experienced the disappointment of Copenhagen in COP15, but actually that turned into real positives with Juana in terms of the establishment of the technology mechanism, and I would have engaged a lot with Juana in her time as a member of the TEC, but also as a member of the advisory board of the Ctcn, and also as when I was the EU negotiator in Paris in COP21. So Juana, this is a well-deserved rest, and hopefully you will go on to do even better things in your retirement. But certainly best wishes from me in terms of enjoy your retirement and enjoy your time at home. Take care.
Thank you very much, Matthew. I will now invite the Vice Chair of the Ctcn Advisory Board. Omedi, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair Ambrosio, for inviting me. And Juana, it's very interesting because in the very first tech meeting, we were together, and we've been together all along. I think we've come a very long way. I don't know who was in the first tech. I don't know, Kennedy, Matt, you are there, of course. And you'll agree with me that Juana is also a good negotiator. of course, she negotiated so many things for us, including funding for the tech. And these are things we cannot forget, and how we navigated through from the first tech up to where we are today. I cannot say it in any better way than colleagues have said. And Ambrosio, I want to echo your points. Matt, the same, everybody else. And I want to say that WANA remains a great resource. Don't hide from us, because we may be compelled to consult you. We will be, time and again. And on matters technology, you are another authority that will never be ignored. So even in your retirement is not to mean that we will not need you anymore. And I wonder, I would only like to tell you that you could also mentor some of us further, and the younger ones as well, even during this time that you have. And to thank you very much indeed. I don't know how. I really appreciate all what we have had personally together and collectively as well in our journey together to where we are today with the technology mechanism. Thank you and best wishes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair of the Ctcn. And I would like to invite Rose to speak on behalf of the Ctcn, I guess, or personally. Rose, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I will speak personally, but also on behalf of the Ctcn. One, I want to start by wishing you a well-deserved retirement. It's a big accomplishment to successfully serve out your term in the UN. So I really want to congratulate you on that and to wish you well. And again, like everybody has said, to echo the fact that please do not retire and keep all that knowledge to yourself, and that I hope you will find avenues to pass on all these years of working with the UNFCCC and the knowledge and experiences you've gathered. But I also want to say that you should take pride in the legacy you've left behind. It's like building a house. The best buildings are the ones with the best foundations, and you laid a very firm foundation for all of us to build on. My colleagues know that I always say that you're as good as the team you have, and that it takes a village, as we say in Africa. None of the work we've done here could have been possible without your leadership that allowed us to really function as a team and deliver, especially in the last 3 years where it's been really very difficult, but we've worked together and thought of really ways that we can keep the technology mechanism alive. And so you should retire with pride and know that you go with our appreciation, and that we acknowledge the work you have done, the foundation you have laid, and that we hope as you look back, you will proudly speak to this work, and that we will keep the legacy of the technology mechanism alive. So I thank you very much, and I wish you well. I wish we could have seen you and bought you a glass of wine or something before you left, but please do accept our well wishes.
Thank you very much, Rose. Now, only to end, we thank you again, Juana, and we hope that we can cross paths again in the future. As many colleagues have said, that you keep connected to us in some way or another. So please enjoy your retirement. And now we go to the closure of this joint session and the Tech 24. So colleagues, with this, I now declare the closing of the joint session and the Tech 24 meeting. Thank you, and thanks to Observer for your active participations. Safe travel for those who will travel, and have a good day, evening for those joining us virtually. The meeting is hereby closed. Thank you all. Goodbye.
And for all of us who are here, we would like to announce that now there is a reception in the ground floor of this building in the room called the Indian Ocean Room. And drinks will be served.